Welcome to the channel. What if I told you that the greatest sports league on earth almost didn't exist? But today, the NBA survived against all odds and is today a global powerhouse worth over $100 billion. What if I told you that its very first game was played in front of people who barely knew what basketball was? What if I also told you that the court was soaking wet, the players were slipping around like it was a cartoon, and everyone thought the whole thing was a joke? Can you imagine a basketball game with no shot clock, no crossovers, and players earning just $60 a game? November 1st, 1946. One game, two teams, and the birth of the NBA. Welcome to Sporty Tales. Today we're going all the way back to the beginning. Hit that subscribe button. Sporty Tales drops one new sports story every week. To understand just how wild this moment was, you need to understand what 1946 looked like. World War II had just ended. America was rebuilding. And professional basketball? It was nothing. It was at best a sideshow compared to baseball and boxing. On June 6, 1946, in New York City, a group of men who mostly owned hockey teams sat down and deliberated on how to fill the empty hockey arenas on nights that hockey was not played. They finally decided to fill them with basketball. That was it. That was the grand vision. Fill the empty seats. The basketball era was born out of trying to fill empty seats. They called their new league the BAA, the Basketball Association of America. 11 teams were formed with a 60-game schedule, and absolutely zero guarantee it would survive a single season. 3 of those original 11 teams folded before year 2 even started. But we'll get to that. First, let's talk about the game that started it all. It was on November 1st, 1946. A Friday night in Toronto, Canada. That's right, the very first NBA game was not played in the United States. It was played in Canada. In a hockey arena, on top of ice, the New York Knickerbockers, coached by Neil Cohalan, had driven all the way up from New York City to face the local team, the Toronto Huskies. The Huskies, desperate to fill seats in a hockey-obsessed city, ran one of the greatest marketing stunts in sports history to get people into the building. Their center, George Nostrand, was 6 feet 8 inches tall. So they took out a newspaper advert that said, "Anyone taller than Nostrand gets in for free." The ad literally said, "Can you top this?" And people showed up. 7,090 fans packed into Maple Leaf Gardens. Tickets cost anywhere from 75 cents to $2.50. But here's the problem nobody planned for. Maple Leaf Gardens was a hockey arena. Underneath that basketball court, ice. And as 7,000 warm bodies crammed in, the temperature rose, the ice started melting, and water began seeping through the floorboards. The players spent half the game slipping and sliding on a wet court. The very first NBA game looked like something out of a comedy show. The key players for the Knicks included Ossie Schectman, who scored 11 points on the night. Leo Ace Gottlieb, top scorer for the Knicks with 14 points. Stan Stutz added 9 points. The key players for the Huskies included Ed Sadowski, the game's overall top scorer with 18 points. George Nostrand, the man of the marketing campaign, scored 16 points. The game was a defensive nail-biter by 1940s standards, ending 68-66 in favor of the Knicks. A 2-point game to open the history books. The shot that started history. The very first basket ever scored in NBA history was hit by Ossie Schectman, a Jewish kid from Queens, New York, who played college ball at Long Island University. It was a simple underhand layup. No fanfare, no celebration. Nobody in that building knew they were watching the birth of something that would one day be worth $100 billion. Schectman himself lived to be 94. And right up until the end of his life, people were still coming to visit him, just to say they shook the hand of the man who scored the NBA's very first points. So 7,000 fans showed up. The game was close. Players were literally sliding around on a wet floor. How did the world react? With a shrug and indifference. Most of those 7,090 fans barely understood the rules. Basketball was not popular in Toronto. It was a hockey city through and through. And the crowds? They got smaller, and smaller, and smaller. By the end of that first season, the Toronto Star reported that the team's owners, Eric Craddock and Harold Shannon, had lost $100,000 in a single year. That's the equivalent of nearly $1 million today. The Toronto Huskies folded after just one season. They were gone. And Toronto wouldn't get another NBA team for almost 50 years, until the Raptors arrived in 1995. The league as a whole was barely hanging on. By 1951, only 3 of the original 11 teams were still standing: the Boston Celtics, the New York Knicks, and the Philadelphia Warriors, who are now called the Golden State Warriors. Every other team? Gone. The Cleveland Rebels? Gone. The Detroit Falcons? Gone. The Pittsburgh Ironmen? Gone. All folded before the league could find its feet. But here's what makes this story so powerful. The league survived against all odds. This scrappy little league with wet courts and fans who didn't know the rules became the NBA. Hey, if you're loving this story so far, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button right now. Sporty Tales goes deep on the stories behind the sport, the history, the drama, the moments that changed everything. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Now we fast forward, because one of the biggest rule changes in basketball history didn't happen in 1946. It happened 33 years later. I'm talking about the three-point line. The three-point line was actually invented out of desperation. In 1961, a man named Abe Saperstein, who had been denied a chance to own an NBA franchise, started his own rival league called the American Basketball League, the ABL. And to make his league exciting and different, he introduced the three-point shot. The ABL collapsed after less than 2 years. But the idea lived on. In 1967, the ABA, the American Basketball Association, picked it up. Their commissioner, George Mikan, argued that the three-pointer would give smaller players a real weapon and make the game more entertaining. He was right. In that first ABA season, teams averaged 5 three-point attempts per game. And one player, Les Selvage of the Anaheim Amigos, attempted 461 three-pointers by himself in a single season. More than some entire team's attempt. But when the ABA and NBA merged in 1976, the NBA killed the three-pointer. They called it a gimmick. Old-school coaches wanted no part of it. Change is the only constant thing in human history. Hence, in June 1979, the NBA officially adopted the three-point line, but only on a 1-year trial basis. They still weren't convinced. The line was set at 23 feet 9 inches from the basket and 22 feet in the corners. And so, on October 12, 1979, the 1979-80 NBA season tipped off. The venue was the Boston Garden, the Celtics hosting the Houston Rockets. Opening night of the new season. 3 minutes and 48 seconds into the first quarter, a Boston Celtics guard named Chris Ford pulled up from behind the new arc and drained it. Boom. 3 points. The first three-pointer in NBA history. And Ford's nickname? The Mad Bomber. But here's where it gets juicy. That same night, Rick Barry of the Houston Rockets also made one. And Kevin Grevey of the Washington Bullets hit one too. 3 different players hit history-making threes on the very same night. There was even a brief controversy. Was it Ford first, or Grevey? There was no internet in 1979. No play-by-play records. And Grevey himself later said, "It made no difference to me. At that moment I wasn't thinking about history. I was thinking if my coach would bench me." Chris Ford got the official credit, and this same game was also the NBA debut of Larry Bird, one of the greatest shooters who ever lived. Ironically, he attempted 1 3 that night and missed. Just like the first game in 1946, the three-pointer was met with skepticism. In that first season, teams averaged just 2.8 three-point attempts per game. Most coaches thought it was a trick shot with no place in serious basketball. In the 1980 NBA Finals, 1 year after the line was introduced, Julius Erving made the only three-pointer of the entire series in Game 3. And in Game 4, neither team attempted a single one. Not one. It took years for the shot to catch on. Danny Ainge became the first player to hit 100 threes in a single season in 1988, and people treated it like he'd done something borderline suspicious. The revolution, Steph Curry. And then came the man who rewrote everything. Stephen Curry, Golden State Warriors. By the end of the 2012-13 season, he'd broken the single-season three-point record with 272 makes. Then he broke his own record, then broke it again. His range was so extreme, so impossible, that defenses had to guard him from the moment he crossed half court. He didn't just change how teams played, he changed what people believed was possible in a basketball game. By 2018-19, NBA teams were averaging 32 three-point attempts per game. Today, some teams shoot close to 40 a night. Compare that to 2.8 in 1979-80. The three-pointer went from being dismissed as a gimmick to the most important shot in basketball in less than 40 years. So here's what we know. In 1946, a group of hockey arena owners started a basketball league that almost nobody wanted and played the first game on a floor soaking in melted ice water in front of fans who barely knew the rules. Ossie Schectman hit an underhand layup for $60 and wrote himself into history. 33 years later, a guard nicknamed the Mad Bomber drained a mid-range jumper that nobody thought mattered and started a revolution. Today, the NBA is worth over $100 billion. It spans 30 franchises. It has fans on every continent. All of it, every Steph Curry logo three, every LeBron fast break dunk, every packed arena, traces back to a rainy Friday night in Toronto, November 1st, 1946. That's the story of the NBA. If you enjoyed this, subscribe right now because we do this every single week. The biggest stories in sport, told the way they deserve to be told. Drop a comment below. Who do you think is the greatest three-point shooter of all time? Steph? Ray Allen? Reggie Miller? Thanks for watching Sporty Tales. If you enjoyed this trip through basketball history, hit the like button and the bell icon so you're always in the loop for our next deep dive. See you in the next one.